In this video, I'll be crafting a potion shop out of XPS foam. This building is packed with a bunch of fun storytelling elements and will be a great addition to my fantasy-themed tabletop games. The leftover foam scraps from my previous video will be a great starting point for the walls of this build. I'm going to be using a hot wire table to cut down all my wall pieces to the correct size. I'm also cutting down some beams which will be used as the wooden sections of the building. The sizing of all these pieces is determined ahead of time on the computer while designing the blueprints. This is my preferred process of crafting architectural terrain pieces. There's a link to the templates in the video description for anyone who is interested and would like to support the channel. Rolled up tinfoil is used to give the wall pieces texture. I'm using my template here to help with the window placement. This section will eventually turn into the vendor window where customers can walk up and purchase a potion. The other walls are then cut to make room for the windows. I'm using 3D printed pieces here to help add some finer detail to the building. Thinner beams are then cut out. These are going to be used as the timber frame detailing on the wall sections. I'm using a hot wire cutter to add wood grain texture into the foam. This leaves a deep texture that takes paint well and looks great on the tabletop. Similar to the windows, I'm using 3D printed doors to add extra detail to the building. After the walls are done, I start gluing on the larger wooden beams. The sections are then combined to create something that finally resembles the beginning of the potion shop. Next, I'm going to be creating some larger beams that will trim the tops of each of the floors. These are going to help give the building that timber frame aesthetic. The second floor is then glued onto the main floor. Roof gables are cut out using my templates as a guide. I'm going to need 3 of these pieces in total. Similar to the walls, these are textured using tin foil. These sections are then glued to the rest of the building. A bunch of larger planks are then cut out on the hot wire table. These thicker pieces will be used to create the roof sections of the building. I'm still making sure to texture these pieces since some of these sections will be peeking through the missing shingles. They're then glued on one by one. The individual pieces create interesting gaps between the planks that help make the foam look even more like wood. Larger beams are then placed on top of the finished roofs. Next step is to get some shingles on these roofs. I'm starting off with a textured block of foam. I'm then adding texture to the face of this chunk. This will be the top of the shingles. The textured side of the chunk is then cut down into a thin strip. Texturing and cutting is repeated until I have enough of these strips. These pieces are then stacked and cut down to size to create a bunch of individual shingles. The shingles are then glued onto the roof. I'm leaving gaps in certain spots to reveal the underlying wooden structure. Doing this adds another level of detail to the roof section. Next up is the wooden shack attached to the side of the building. I imagine this section being the place where the alchemist conducts their messiest and most dangerous experiments. This section is framed out to look like a wooden structure. Parts like this will add a bunch of visual contrast to the overall build. Here I'm using plastic toy tubes to create the chimneys of the shack. This next section I'm working on involves cutting out a few cylinders using a jig on the hot wire cutter. These pieces are going to be used to create a big wooden barrel attached to the side of the building. This is going to be the container that the alchemist stores all their brewed potion in. Some sections are textured to look wooden, while the other textures are left flat to look like metal. The pieces are then glued together. I'm lightly texturing the metal sections to make them look more interesting. I'm being careful to keep this minimal to maintain the look of metal. These pearl stickers from the dollar store are perfect for creating rivets. I'm first placing a dab of glue in the spots I want to rivet. I'm then sticking the rivets on, making sure they're aligned correctly. A generous amount of wood glue is then used to attach the barrel to the building. I'm then adding a curved pipe to connect the building to the barrel, and a valve wheel is added to the top to add some extra detail. Next, I'm going to be adding some additional potion shop elements to the exterior of the building. These barrels with potions on top add some great detail to the build. I'm finishing up the vendor window by adding some shutters. I'm then placing some potion inventory on the ledge. The barrels are glued to the structure since I want to create this building without a base. A wooden sign is printed out and attached to the front of the shop. At this stage we can admire the pink and plastic goodness, because it will soon be covered up in paint. I'm airbrushing on black primer to get into all the small nooks and get an even coverage on the plastic bits. I start painting in the wall sections first. I can be a bit messy here since I'll be able to clean up any of the areas where I go outside of the lines in the next stage where I paint the wood. The wood section is painted on carefully using the darkest of my brown colors. Any areas that need to be cleaned up are done so at this point. I'm dry brushing on a lighter brown here to emphasize the texture of the wood grain. I decided to make the roof of the shop purple to give the building a magical look. I'm using a few different hues of purple to give the shingles an interesting gradient. Next, all the metal parts are painted in. The barrels are painted along with the smaller details on the doors and the shutters. The bottles are base coated with a dark turquoise and then filled in with different liquid potion colors. I'm scraping down a soft pastel to make pigment powder. This is then placed in all the joints of the building to add shading. A reddish brown is painted in all the joints of the metallic pieces to make them look more interesting. Flock and PVA glue is combined to create a mossy paste. This is applied throughout to add a bit of visual contrast and make the building look overgrown. The final detail is to paint up a large potion for the shop sign. Once attached, this building is finished and open for business. And that wraps up this video. If you enjoyed it, make sure to hit the like button, leave a comment, and subscribe for future hobby content. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.